Hillary Clinton paced frantically across her private office, phone clutched tightly in her hand. The morning had begun like any other until that damning text message arrived. "It's happening. Tomorrow. First thing." No signature needed. Yu Dao. She knew exactly who it was from and what it meant. "Get me John immediately," she snapped at her assistant through the intercom. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled up the encrypted messaging app on her private device. John Mercer had been her most trusted advisor for 15 years. If anyone could help navigate this impending disaster, it would be him. The phone rang 3 times before he answered. "We have a problem," Hillary said, dispensing with pleasantries. "The files are going public tomorrow." "Which ones?" John's voice was measured, careful. "All of them. The foundation transactions, the private server backups, the transcripts, everything we've worked to keep buried." Hillary's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "Someone on the inside sold us out." "That's not possible. Only 5 people had access to the complete archives." "Well, one of them talked." Hillary slammed her fist on the desk. "I want names, John. I want to know who betrayed me before this hits the news cycle. I'll make some calls. In the meantime, we need to prepare statements. Get ahead of this." "No statements, no acknowledgement. Full denial. We've weathered worse." "With all due respect, Madam Secretary, I don't think we have." Hillary fell silent, the gravity of the situation crushing down on her. Every political battle, every scandal, every victory and defeat throughout her career had led to this moment. And for the first time in decades, she felt genuine fear. "What about the others?" she finally asked. "I've already contacted them. Everyone's cutting short whatever they're doing. We'll convene in the secure room in 90 minutes. "Not there," Hillary countered. "Too many eyes. My house, the basement conference room. And John, make sure everyone's devices stay outside. No exceptions." After hanging up, Hillary sank into her chair and closed her eyes. The careful web of power and influence she'd spent decades building was unraveling with frightening speed. Names and faces flashed through her mind. Allies who might become enemies. Confidants who might have betrayed her. The political landscape was shifting beneath her feet, and for once she wasn't controlling the narrative. The emergency meeting convened in Hillary's secure basement conference room 2 hours later. 5 grim faces stared back at her from around the table. Wuchu. Her crisis management team hastily assembled from various corners of the country. "The information appears to be coming from multiple sources," explained Sandra Wheeler, Hillary's media strategist, "which suggests this isn't a spontaneous leak but a coordinated effort." "By whom?" Hillary demanded. "That's the troubling part," David Chen, her legal counsel, interjected. "We're seeing digital fingerprints from both opposition parties and, more concerning, from former allies within your own ranks. The party's turning on me. It wasn't a question." "Let's call it strategic distancing," Sandra offered diplomatically. "With the upcoming announcements, certain factions feel you've become a liability," Hillary finished. "After everything I've done for them. The following is a political thriller created for entertainment purposes only and is not intended to reflect actual events or real-world policies." John cleared his throat. "There's more. We've traced at least part of the leak to someone with Secret Service credentials, someone who had access to your private residence during your time as secretary." Hillary's face drained of color. "I vetted everyone personally, which means whoever it is has been playing a very long game," David said quietly. Marco Vasquez, Hillary's cybersecurity expert, spoke up. "The data breaches were sophisticated but left distinct patterns. Whoever did this wanted us to eventually figure out it was an inside job." "They wanted me to know I'd been betrayed," Hillary whispered. "This isn't just about exposing information. It's personal." "It gets worse," Sandra interjected, glancing down at her tablet. "We're getting word that 3 major networks have bumped their scheduled programming for tomorrow morning. They're planning special reports. What time? Hillary asked sharply. AM Eastern. Simultaneous launches. The room fell silent as implications settled heavily on every shoulder. Betrayal from within her innermost circle cut deeper than any political attack ever could. We have less than 18 hours, Hillary finally said. I want every connection leveraged, every favor called in. Find me something anything. We can use to discredit these leaks before they hit the mainstream. And if we can't, David asked quietly. Hillary's eyes hardened. Then we identify who's behind this and make sure they regret it. No one does this to me without consequences. Join our movement for transparency. Stand up for the truth. Democracy depends on accountability. The call came at 3:17 a.m., jolting Hillary from a fitful sleep. It was Eleanor Nichols, her oldest friend and the deputy director of a prominent news network. They have the video, Hill, Eleanor said without preamble. Not just documents, actual footage. Hillary sat upright, fully awake now. What video? The Carthage meeting. 2018, 4 simple words that spelled absolute catastrophe. The Carthage Group, Iuarguacu, a coalition of influential donors and power brokers whose very existence was denied in public. Ius, and the promises Hillary had made to secure their backing. That's not possible. There were no recordings allowed. Someone wore a wire, high-quality audio, some video. They're running it as their lead story at 6 a.m. Hillary's mind raced through possibilities, each more desperate than the last. Eleanor, you have to block it, delay it, anything. I can't. This is coming from the top. Everyone's jumping on it, Not just the usual suspects, but our network too. They're calling it the story of the decade. The phone nearly slipped from Hillary's grasp. Who else knows about this? Everyone who matters. Your party leadership had an emergency call an hour ago. They're preparing to distance themselves completely. I built that party into what it is today, Hillary hissed, and now they're tearing it down to save themselves, Eleanor replied softly. I'm sorry, Hill. Really. Hillary ended the call and immediately dialed John. It's worse than we thought, she said when he answered. They have Carthage. The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. Get everyone back here now, Hillary ordered. And John, bring the contingency files. Are you sure? Once we go down that road, they've left me no choice. As the call ended, Hillary stood at her bedroom window, staring out at the pre-dawn darkness. For decades, she'd navigated the treacherous waters of American politics, surviving scandals that would have destroyed lesser figures. But this was different. This was everything, all at once. And for the first time, she couldn't see a path forward. Until now, she'd always played by certain unspoken rules, lines that weren't crossed. But if they were changing the game, perhaps it was time she did too. The contingency files contained enough dirt to sink a dozen political careers, acquisiforums. Insurance she'd hoped never to use. The nuclear option. Her phone buzzed with an incoming text. Unknown number, but the message was clear. Running won't help. The truth always comes out. Hillary's jaw tightened. Whoever was behind this was watching her every move, predicting her responses, which meant they knew her better than she cared to admit. By morning, Hillary's team had reassembled in the war room, faces drawn from a sleepless night. The major networks will all carry it, Sandra reported grimly. Social media is already trending with hashtags, and 3 senior party members have scheduled press conferences for this afternoon. They're jumping ship before they've even seen the evidence, Hillary said bitterly. John placed a tablet in front of her. This just leaked online. It's only a fragment, but... The screen showed Hillary in an opulent hotel suite, speaking candidly, to a room of wealthy donors. Her words were crystal clear. Public policy and private assurances sometimes need to diverge. What I'm sharing with you today will never leave this room." Hillary shoved the tablet away. "Where are we on identifying the source?" "We've narrowed it to 3 possibilities," David said. "But it won't matter once this goes public." "Everything always matters," Hillary snapped. "Information is power, even now." Marco looked up from his laptop. "I've been analyzing the digital signatures. The leak pattern is strange, or it's almost as if—" "As if what?" Hillary pressed. "As if it's been designed to implicate multiple sources, like someone wants us chasing ghosts." The room fell silent as they absorbed this. "A false flag," John suggested. "Maybe," Marco replied uncertainly. "Or maybe there's a single architect behind all of this, using others as unwitting accomplices." The intercom buzzed. "Madam Secretary, the President is on line 1. A heavy silence fell over the room. The current President, once Hillary's staunch ally, AU, had been notably absent from their emergency outreach efforts. "Put it on speaker," she ordered. "Hillary." The President's voice filled the room. No warmth, no familiarity. "I'm calling as a courtesy before my press secretary makes a statement. Mr. President—" "No, Hillary, there's nothing to discuss. The White House will be condemning these actions in the strongest possible terms and cooperating fully with the inevitable investigations. You don't even know if any of this is legitimate. I've seen enough." The President's voice hardened. "We all have. This administration cannot and will not be associated with what's coming to light. I suggest you prepare accordingly." The line went dead, leaving Hillary staring at her team with barely controlled rage. "They're closing ranks against me," she whispered. "All of them." John approached cautiously. "We still have the contingency files. If we release them strategically, it won't be enough." Hillary cut him off. "Not anymore. We need to think bigger." She turned to Sandra. "Get me a live interview. Any major network, within the hour. No preconditions, no approved questions." Sandra's eyes widened. "That's incredibly risky. Without preparation, sometimes the best defense is a surprise counteroffensive," Hillary replied. "They're expecting me to hide, to deny. Let's give them something they're not expecting." The next 3 hours passed in a blur of frantic calls and emergency meetings. Then, precisely at 6 a.m., it began. Every major network, every news website, every political publication simultaneously released their versions of the story. Hillary sat alone in her private study, watching multiple screens as her carefully constructed world imploded in real time. The Carthage video played on endless loop do you, clips of promises made in private that directly contradicted her public positions, financial records showing patterns that couldn't be explained away, private emails discussing how to manage perceptions around controversial decisions. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls she no longer had the heart to answer. What could anyone possibly say now? At 6:45 a.m., against her team's desperate advice, Hillary Clinton walked into a network studio for her live interview. No makeup team, no pre-interview preparation. Just Hillary, looking every bit as exhausted and besieged as she actually was. "Madam Secretary," the visibly surprised anchor began, "I appreciate you joining us this morning, especially given the breaking news about a—" "Let's not pretend this is ordinary breaking news, Richard," Hillary interrupted. "This is a coordinated attack on my character and legacy. But what your viewers might not realize is who's really behind it. You're suggesting these documents and videos are fraudulent? I'm saying there's a bigger story here, about power and who really wields it in this country, about what happens when you dare to challenge the status quo." For the next 15 minutes, Hillary laid out a narrative that left the anchor speechless. She acknowledged certain meetings had taken place but reframed them as necessary compromises in a broken system. She named names Powerful figures who had initially supported her before turning against her when she refused certain demands. They wanted someone they could control, she said directly to the camera. And when they realized they couldn't control me, they decided to destroy me instead. Back in the war room, her team watched in stunned silence. "She's going scorched earth," Sandra whispered. "No," John corrected. "She's changing the narrative, making this about corruption of power rather than her specific actions." "Will it work?" David wondered. "It's Hillary Clinton," John replied, a hint of admiration in his voice. "Never count her out." As the interview ended, Hillary returned to find her team energized, phones ringing constantly with new developments. "Social media is exploding," Sandra reported. "You've created a whole new conversation. Instead of just discussing the leaks, people are debating the system itself." John entered without knocking, his face ashen. "It's worse than we thought. They have the complete archives, not just selected materials. New documents are being released every 15 minutes. "Who?" Hillary's voice was steady now, the earlier panic replaced by cold determination. "Who did this to me?" "It wasn't just one person. That's what makes this so devastating. Multiple sources from different periods in your career, all coordinated, to release simultaneously. This was planned for years." Hillary looked up, a sudden clarity cutting through her exhaustion. "The party wants me gone, permanently sidelined. They're using this to ensure I can't influence the next election cycle." "That appears to be part of it, yes." She stood slowly, straightening her shoulders. "Then we have no choice. Full counterattack. Release everything we have on everyone. If I'm going down, I'm not going alone." John stared at her. "Hillary, that would destroy decades of alliances, expose countless—" "Do it," she cut him off. "They thought I would panic, curl up and hide. They don't know me at all." Her eyes gleamed with cold determination. "This isn't over, not by a long shot." Marco burst into the room, laptop in hand. "I found something. The leak. Iku Oruwu. I know who's behind it." All eyes turned to him. "It's not the party." "Not entirely. There's someone else pulling the strings." He turned the laptop around, showing them a complex web of connections. "Someone who's been planning this for years. Someone who knows you better than almost anyone." Hillary leaned forward, staring at the screen. Her expression hardened as realization dawned. "Of course," she whispered. "It was always going to be you. Thank you for watching this political thriller. If you enjoyed this content, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more entertaining political fiction. Remember, this story is created purely for entertainment and does not reflect real events or real-world policies."